Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Counterpoise podcast. We're so grateful that you guys showed up today. We have a really good show for you today. But before I get started, before we get started and getting into it, I just wanted to let you know, number one, this this episode is going to be a little different because we are going to do a series. It's going to be our first series. We're going to talk about our topic in parts. So we'll get into that in a minute. I'll let let you know what we're talking about. But before we do that, I did want to go ahead and highlight our Black Business of the Week. Just bear with me 1 second because my computer is doing what it wants to do instead of what I'm telling it to do. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
We can see it.
Okay, great. So today's Black business is called The Hood Alchemist. The Hood Alchemist is a business where you get different types of products for skincare. For those of you that are spiritual, there's also sage, there's hair care products, things like that. I have personally purchased them myself and I love them. I hit shop all, gave me a pop-up, don't know why. Let's see. Let's try that again. Okay. So see, they sell, and the prices are very reasonable. She sells sage, lip balm, coffee scrub, body scrub, different types of body scrubs. She has all kinds of things you can put in your bath. They're all for your skincare and also to don't touch my hair care. That's for your hair. So she has all different kinds of products. So please make sure you go check her out. She is called, the name of the website is hoodalchemistco.com. That's HOODalchemistco.com. So make sure you guys hit her up and check her out. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this mic on over to my co-hosts so they can go ahead and introduce themselves and we can go ahead and get this thing started.
Hi, guys. My name is Malik Foster, co-host for the Counterpoise podcast.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Everett Stevenson. I'm one of your other co-hosts as well for the Counterpoise pod. And today we have a pretty touchy subject that we want to talk on. So we want to give a disclaimer to anyone. This is going to talk on race relations, interracial dating. It's going to talk on parenting, and a lot of other, not parenting, pardon me, but child rearing rather, and a lot of other subjects. Today we're going to discuss the Willie Lynch paper and its origins. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware of everything that we have going on and everything that we're going to be talking about, so that no one is triggered by any of the discussion that we have for you guys today. We felt like this was a topic that just had to be discussed, seeing as how it's something that we see in having effects in today's society. So we wanted to bring that to you guys and give you some of our viewpoints as how we see it being prevalent in the current society. And even though this is something that was alleged to be stated hundreds of years ago. To give you a background of who Willie Lynch is, he was a Caribbean, I believe, slave owner, and was asked to come to speak to Virginia slave owners in the South to talk about controlling their slave population, which at the time was, I mean, looking like they were having a lot of difficulty with controlling them, and more importantly, it was like the spirit, trying to figure out how to enslave and how to have a lasting effect on individuals. And as you know, some of the things that he said we wanted to highlight today, which were really powerful, was that one of the things was how these methods that he discussed with the individuals would be able to control individuals for over hundreds of years. I believe he said 300 years in particular. And we found that a lot of the stuff that we seen that was discussed in that article or in that speech is currently still going on today. And so some of the things that we wanted to highlight again was he referenced age, color. He talked about breaking down the family. He discussed control factors such as management and who were to be managed, and how different factors would discuss how individuals would be controlled. He discussed offspring of blacks and offsprings of whites and blacks that mix together. And ultimately, he also discussed the warning signs of what issues may arise that could possibly prevent the actual control of the slaves in the South. So we felt that this was a powerful discussion, and we wanted to give it just due and provide you guys with context on some of these things and bring forward this discussion. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to jump it off if anybody wants to cap off with some of the discussions. But one of the first things that I think Willie Lynch discussed as well, and we talked about one of these older subjects, which were color. Again, he discussed how you can rank individuals based off of their coloring, and we talked about how that's currently has occurred in today's society within people choices. I think just last week there was an article about Too Short that made a comment, which is a rapper out in Oakland area, Bay Area. And he made a reference to colorism. I think there was another statement that was made not too long ago in reference to colorism. So that's something that we see that's very prevalent in today's society as well. I know you guys had some other issues that you guys wanted to talk about a little more in depth.
I think the letter was very profound at the time, in a negative way though. Not a positive one. I want to highlight the whole purpose and the point of the letter overall, which was control. That's what this was about, controlling the slaves at the time, and for the slave owners to potentially have control over the slaves, to utilize them for free, reduced labor in order to earn a profit, right? That's what this is all about. Free, cheap, reduced labor, controlling people in order to obtain profit. So Willie Lynch, he comes to Virginia around 1712 to give these, colonizers, these British colonizers, aid and assistance in controlling their slaves. So the main points that Willie Lynch hit on was fear, distrust, envy for control purposes, right? So, and my co-host Everett here, he highlighted one of the points with the colorism, right? That creates a divide. It creates a social class within the slaves to let them know, like, hey, if you have a lighter color or if you have some drop of white blood inside of you, you'll be able to get more benefits. You can be closer to the house. You can be closer to the white people, the people who have the stuff that you would like for your own life, right? And also another thing he pointed out was the whole age thing, right? Dividing the slaves with that, right? The old versus the young slaves, and also keeping the men away from the women. So in order to create a further divide amongst the families, as you can kind of see today, where, a lot of Black families aren't together, which is evidenced by what we talked about in another podcast show when we went over some of the Black demographics and demonstrate how Black people as a group aren't as married as other groups, right? And Black women are the least likely to get married. And this could be attributed to that in some ways, even though, you know, Black people used to be married a lot more. But I think what we'll probably get into another show is once we get more into the media and outside factors that kind of influence that shift even more so. And I think my co-host here, Sam, will kind of get more into some of the gender stuff than I will. But I just wanted to touch on it and highlight it as a point that we will discuss today.
I real quickly, Sam, before you jump in, I wanted to also highlight what you said too, Malik, because there's also something that we're going to talk on as well in relations to how being in relationships currently is one of the biggest factors that has attribute to wealth for individuals. And in particular, I know we've seen an article that talked about whether it's a single male or a single, female, but, it definitely helps in a lot of cases for a lot of females with it adding to their wealth. But it also helps on a lot of men's side as well to be in relationships or to be married, it is said. So I wanted to add how we know based off of current society where a lot of people stand economically, how drastic things are, having relationships and having someone that you can have in your as a partner could be, super beneficial. And so I just want to add that in there real quick.
Yeah. I was just going to add on that he is completely correct. I looked up an article and sent it to the group, and we basically had that discussion. And as I was reading the article, I found it very interesting that, kind of what Sam and I were talking about on another show that we did, how, being together as a group, as a family structured unit, your income is going to increase dramatically. And in that article, it highlights how a woman who's in a relationship benefits more financially. And a man who's single by himself, it hurts him the most in this country. So that was interesting to read about. So I just wanted to highlight those points. And go ahead, Sam, get into it.
Sorry, I was on mute. So, sure. So one of the things that I wanted to get into was more about the Willie Lynch papers themselves, right? There's a whole campaign that the Willie Lynch papers weren't real, but when you really look at what goes on within society, particularly within the Black family, and how we've learned things, we've touched on this many, many times in previous shows about how things have happened stemming from when Black people were brought over from Africa to this country and enslaved, and the way that that our ancestors had to live, and the way that they were broken down mentally. So like, you have physical enslavement and you have mental enslavement. And when you learn more about the Willie Lynch papers and what they actually say, then it makes a lot of things make sense as it relates to what goes on between Black people as it relates to relationships, marriage, family, things like that. One of the biggest goals for the Willie Lynch papers was to keep the body and take the mind, right? It says it throughout. It talks about pretty much enslaving the Black person. I'm going to say Black person, but they refer to us throughout as niggers, and they refer to us as if we are livestock. But what they do is they try to enslave the mind, because you can keep the body and get the body to do the work, right? You want them to be strong and big and all this stuff and do whatever the heck you want them to do, just like, you would a horse or a mule or whatever, right? So one of the things that they say is if you have a wild horse, just like if you have a wild Black person, they're not going to be any good for the economy. And if the goal was to make money, then they want to break them down mentally so that they are good for the economy. And the way that they did that was they paid very special attention to the women and to the youngest boy. They say the youngest offspring, but they were focusing specifically on the youngest boy. What they would do is they would crossbreed, which is literally they would rape the Black women and they would have babies. So the more biracial children they had, as Malik touched on, they would have those benefits that Malik mentioned of being closer to the house, things like that. They got to get jobs that the non-mixed breed children could have. Some of them were educated. Most slaves were not. And what that did was it created animosity between the slaves, whether it be because of the complexion, because of the, fact that they're closer to the house. But the thing that nobody ever considered was the fact that that Black woman was raped in order to have that child, right? Which also emasculates the man, right? Because especially, let's say that this man and this woman are together, because slavery was not, and during slavery, the enslaved were not allowed to get married. So let's say that they were together, right? They loved each other. They created their own family. And if the slave master comes in and he makes a bed wench out of the female slave, then, that emasculates the man because he can't protect her. One of the things that they did.
Hold on. There's also other elements that goes into that as well, because, you have to, as far as going even back to like similar to the Emmett Till situation, like and not just saying that, but it went both ways. You feel what I'm saying? So there was also, male slaves that were raped, if you will. You feel me?
Right.
And if anything was to ever happen out of that, they would be, lose their life. You feel what I'm saying? For
right.
acts as well, and not just to, just to say that it one or another, like it was just tragic on both regards, because that's
right.
damaging to a female that may be married to this man and feel like hey, he got to do whatever just to keep whatever bond y'all might have going on.
Right. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me, just real quick. I just want to say that goes into what you were saying in regards to like I said, that process is being something that goes on where, guys
right.
and accused of things that maybe they didn't do, that they weren't, not maybe, but that they didn't do.
Right.
And may have been falsely accused.
Right. And it also goes into the next thing I was going to talk about, which is that process of breaking the slave, right?
And an example of that, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
That in today's society may be this Deshaun Watson situation, which has been on hold for I don't know how long, but we don't know. We haven't seen anything, and that man has not been able to continue to play in the NFL. We don't know what's going on, and it is an example of currently something that they have reference to something that we were just bringing on. But,
right.
I'm sorry.
Right. So when you talk about the breaking process of the female, what they would do is they would gather all the slaves. They prefer to have a pregnant female slave or a female slave with a young boy. They would then take the biggest, blackest slave or black man, bullwhip him, beat him to near death, burn him, tie his body. I'm sorry, this is really graphic. So let me just make sure I put that out there. Tie his body to two ends of a horse and send the horses in two different directions. Then what they would do is they would take the next biggest, blackest slave and beat him to near death. And they would do that in front of the female and in front of the youngest child. And the reason why they preferred the boy is because then at that point, they have gotten the woman to break the slaves generationally for every child she has, because what she does is she then teaches her son, what it does is it switches the roles, right? Because that was the goal. It says it all throughout that they wanted to reverse the relationships where it makes the woman more independent. When she's teaching her children, she's teaching the female to be more independent, more self-reliant, because she's protective. She's a protective mother. And she's teaching the son to be weaker, to be docile, to be, not as strong or strong-willed, but to just do what he's told and fall in line. And when you look at that and you compare that to today's society, right? We talked about this last week on our podcast when we were talking about the commercial with Rapunzel and, being an independent woman. There's nothing wrong with being an independent woman, but understand that it's one thing to be independent. It's because you don't feel the need to have to wait on somebody else to get to where you're going. It's something else when you're doing it out of fear and doing it based on the fact that that's what you were taught. Because when you look at that, you see a lot of, like we talked about, unmarried Black women. And when they bring up, and there's a whole campaign about it, and we may touch on it some other time, but I just we may talk about it more in detail rather at some other time, but I did just want to touch on it. When you look at the relationship between mothers and their children, right? And Black mothers and their Black children, specifically as it relates to their daughters versus their sons, you hear often about how Black women typically are harder on their daughters than they are on their sons. They raise their daughters to be more independent, to have a better understanding as to the things that are going on in society, and they kind of baby their sons. So then, and it's not true in all Black families. I'm not trying to say that goes on everywhere, but it does happen. And what happens is those men grow up and they have to rely on a woman because they just don't know, they don't really know how else to survive. Because they're so used to being enabled and treated in that particular way. You're on mute, E. Yeah.
I also wanted to make sure that when we make these statements, we don't want to make it seem like this is something that we're saying is fact, that, this is all situation.
With everybody, right.
Yeah, like this is just, if you see these type of things in society, this could be some of the contributing factors, but we're not saying that this is all Black people or anything like that, not at all. Or that any of these things are wrong in itself in regards to interracial dating or anything like that at all. But I think that when we look at, the history and what's being said and how things are being played out, it does have to make you look at it and take a conversation and to take a thought of it. So I just want to jump in with that as well. And also jump in on some of the things that you said too, Sam, of one of the ways with the breaking thing, and how that had an effect on the psyche of not only just, again, the mother and how she was perceiving and having to raise her children, but also on the family and the structure of as a whole of the, the Black family or the Black society, and kind of training, in a sense, like the mind of thinking, what we say sometimes is the white man's ice is colder. And that mindset of just, maybe living in the suburbs is better, or having certain desires to do certain things that, whether it's clothing, whether it's any other thing like that a person to say, oh, okay, well, I want to do that, I want to do this, and not necessarily question why you have that desire to do what you do. And there's some things that we talked about, again, there's imagery and videos that talk to that, to see how that has been played psychologically into success in today's world. And now we'll talk about that as well in one of our future episodes. But
yeah, I think that goes into a little bit what I was saying earlier about the whole purpose of the Willie Lynch letter, right? His whole purpose of his speech is the control, right? And some of those things that you were talking about, E, is all about the control. And what Sam was talking about, dividing the different genders, the male and female, making the woman independent, right? It was all about control, because if she's more independent, she's going to be more cooperative on what you're doing, and you're trying to get her to do a certain thing, right? So I compare that I kind of compare it to today, like how the jobs and the employer has essentially replaced a lot of the husbands, because a lot of women are so independent, they don't have the need for these men like they used to, because an independent woman today has more security than an independent woman back during Willie Lynch's time. Because if you were an independent woman, you were at risk, right? Yeah, the only person you could rely on would be essentially, okay, that male slave that's with you. He can try his best to protect you, but once they removed him, it's like you're
Or change their mindset about him, right?
Exactly.
Or change, right?
That too.
Right. That's right.
So
That's
you'll
being
be able
to,
get into their mind, like you were saying, Sam, and that goes back into the distrust, which is a much stronger emotion.
Let me get on that too. I also think that, like you said too, with the distrust, but it also goes into that mindset of also a protector or a provider in some sense.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes that can lead to someone feeling like, oh man, well, you might not be able to, provide for me or, protect me the way that I think I make it protected over here.
But real quick, E, let me interject. Women function off of security, right? Like a woman feels safe in a relationship when she feels secure. And secure doesn't necessarily just mean within her own skin. She has to feel safe, right? So if her man or her mate is unable to make her feel like that, he has been emasculated in her mind. So he's no longer able to protect her or her children. So then she has to become the protective one. And so she does that by going about it differently. She may not be physically protective, but what she'll do is she'll teach her children. And that right there is the breakdown in the mindset of how you take the mind and leave the body, because it's like, now I'm out of fear. I'm teaching my children how to survive as opposed to how to flourish and live and grow, right? Because we are in this space that we can't break out of, because that's the mindset, right? We're in this space that we cannot break out of. How do we survive it? And, being a fighter isn't it. So I have to teach my children how to be docile, how to make sure they follow everything and just do everything that they're told
to get a better life or to make it to tomorrow. And I think, like you said, that's that survivor's mentality. And it's kind of like a mindset where it's like, okay, a check to check, or you know what I mean? Like it's like you don't feel like you're able to get ahead or even think about ahead because you're just trying to make it to tomorrow. And so, when that pressure's on or that foot's on your neck like that, it is very hard to, and I think, and we see that nowadays, even within dating. I mean, me and my friends, we talk about this all the time. Like, what? If you ain't coming with something off the rip, what? Like, boy, like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, that is here. You feel what I mean? Like, that is very much here.
But the article that I pointed out, it kind of contradicts a lot of that stuff that a lot of these independent women are saying. Like, they believe them being independent is the best option for them, even financially speaking, right? Okay, maybe personally you feel better independent. I get that. But financially speaking, a woman being independent is not necessarily the best decision financially. And statistics have proven that time and time again. Even for a man, that's not your best decision either. So for both genders, no matter what your sexual orientation or gender, together is the best option.
I think we have to be a little bit honest too on this debate, because in a sense, I could understand where for a Black woman, this kind of changes a little bit because of the status of
how does it change when your income almost?
I'm not saying across the board. It shouldn't. But I think the mindset becomes for a lot of women is that, I don't know, I can't speak for a woman, but I believe though, if a woman feels like I'm making 60, 70, my man only making like 30 or 40, they might not see that as you know what I'm saying, a 110 game. They're gonna look at that like, oh, I'm helping in on things, I'm having to do more. And so their mindset is almost like, okay, instead of me gaining an extra 40, and we could do whatever we was gonna do.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into the media and the marketing that we kind of want to get into.
Well, we'll get into all of that. But the thing is just to touch on your point, E, as a woman, I've been in that situation where I made more than my significant other, right? And we've also touched on, how that makes him feel and all that. But at the end of the day, I can only speak for myself. I'm not the spokeswoman for all women, right? But I know for me, it was more about, look, this is what we're doing because we need to do it. It wasn't about the fact that, oh my God, I'm making more money, I got to do more. When at some point, when he was doing less, not just financially, but you know, in other aspects of our relationship, then of course, you know, I had to end the relationship. But at the end of the day, it also depends on other contributions that are being made in that relationship. I just wanted to say that really quickly. But as all of this stuff relates to what goes on with Black relationships, yes, you know, if financially we should, in order to thrive and be stronger, you know, they say together we stand, divided we fall. And also in order to do that, you have to divide and conquer. They've been doing, let me make sure I make this statement and I'm correct in the way that I say it. When I say they, I don't mean everybody, right? Throughout history, right? In order for Black people to remain at the bottom of the totem pole, they had to have been divided, right? That goes all the way back to when the dynasties of Africa fell, right? And so what they had to do was they had to divide Africans. They had to pit us up against one another. That's how the enslaved became enslaved in the first place, because people were against each other. That's how they were kidnapped. And then when they brought them here and enslaved them, what they did was they divided them more, whether it be by age, whether it be by color, whether it be by gender. All of these things kept us divided, and it has kept us, you know, mentally enslaved. And so as a result, you know, when you talk about the Black family, it's not about whether or not you need a Black family. You need it. You know, you don't need any of that if you don't want to have that. But to understand how the Black community has to grow and strengthen, we have to do that together, whether that be through having Black family or, you know, growing economically together, you know, as a
strength in numbers adage.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, you know what I'm saying?
That's going to have to be the foundation for the Black family, is that
exactly.
we have to be able to find that common ground, because right now there definitely seems to be a divide.
Exactly. So, you know, before I get into, you know, what our motivational minute and getting back into the Black business, I did want to make sure I put that out there. Like, you know, we do have to continue to make sure that we grow as a unit, and we can't do that unless we do that as a unified front.
I think that's an excellent segue into like my last little point that we had on there, which was one of the warnings that Mr. Lynch discussed in his speech. And it was about, it reminds me of like, it's a quote that Pimp C said on the intro to a song by Jay-Z and Rick Ross. I think it's FWMYUKIGT is the name of the song. But he says, don't get mad at the young kings who want to walk around, the young brothers who walk around with gold chains and rings. You know, he said they shine because they, you know what I'm saying, they don't know their history, that they're really kings and queens. You know what I'm saying? It's part of them. They just don't know who they are. And one of the things that that Willie talked about was that he said the mind is strong and it will recorrect itself over and over. It has a tendency to do that. So for the strong minded, that's why when people talk about praying to their ancestors and ancestors who got them to this point, that it had to be a strong individual to go through and endure through all of the things that, you know, were thrown at you in life, and to be able to make it to this point. So to know your history, to know who you are, to know your legacy, to know all of those things is the things that will give you pride as an individual of who you are and what you are. So I know you're about to get ready to go into that, the motivational speeches in a minute, but I also wanted to talk on one of the things that he said was the warning signs to them, was that, again, the original historical basis is one of the things that he referred to. And he said that, you know, as the mind will look to recreate itself, it will, if it gets to know substantial original historical basis, that it will become stronger and stronger. And I think that's what Pimp C was referring to. Not just the shine, not just the gold and all of that, but the legacy of knowing that, okay, I come from greatness. You know what I mean? That's why I took the look to love my brother. I love my sister. That's why I look to, you know, look out for my people. That's why I look to, you know, hold my head up right when I go through and do what I do. That's why I look to, you know, like I said, support other Black brands. Shout out to, this was what my teacher wear. He, you know, made this shirt. definitely felt it was fitting for this show. But that's why a lot of brothers look to do a lot of the things that they do, because they understand that one, who they are, what they represent. They can see just from either their direct lineage, as far as their fathers and grandfathers and things of that nature, mothers, aunties, sisters, uncles, as so on and so forth. They can look to those individuals and see, that their history isn't too far, whether it's, the original history back in, the homeland, or just like you said, the Bible, whatever you want to look at, you know what I'm saying? The original man, I don't know what you want to go towards, but it's going to all lead back to that. Back to black is what I should say, rather. So, that's one of the things that I wanted to say. Another thing that he said, and also to keep people away from learning their lineage, is a lot of illusion and to create illusions. And that's one of the things that we're definitely going to get into next week. But I just wanted to go ahead and leave that little tidbit for you. So for those who's watching and want to get into it, you guys will be able to see some of the illusions that we'll talk about in modern day society. But I just wanted to reference that and say that that's one of the reasons why you see too. You look at critical race theory. That's one of the reasons why they don't even want to teach things that could possibly make people feel bad about how they acted. I was looking, there was just a teacher that in Texas that got in trouble for saying something like, "Oh, well, you can't have books about the Holocaust if you're not going to have books that's anti-Holocaust." And I said, what's the anti-Holocaust?
It all goes back to the central point of control too, E. Like what you mentioned with the history. In the mind, right? So that's another reason why they started breeding slaves in the Americas, as opposed to, okay, we always got to go back to Africa to get the slaves, because those slaves already have the history, they already have the knowledge, their brains are already conditioned a certain way, so it'd be a lot harder to break them, as Willie Lynch described in the letter, the breaking process, breaking them, kind of compared it to a horse, when you break a horse in.
Right, like you said, with the breeding. So we had to, and he talked about controlling the younger generation. And so that was one of the things. Like, so if you can get the woman and the man to break off, and now you can control those younger generations, you're not bringing that historical people in. You're starting with the fresh new crop that you know what I'm saying. I don't want to say crop, but you feel what I mean? But
but livestock, because that's how they look at it.
And the mindset that you have with, again, control the body, keep the mind.
Because like being
take the mind, control the body, right? So, and that's the thing, like it's mind control. And that's the reason why you hear terms today where people talk about mental enslavement or being woke and all that other kind of stuff, because, people are learning, Black people in America are learning about where they come from and who they are. Not necessarily in the sense of, oh yeah, I know I'm a good person, my favorite color is blue and all that, or I'm a lawyer. Yeah, those are things that are about me, but about who I am at my foundation, who I am at my core, based on my history and my heritage, and based on, my ancestry, right? We learn these things, and it creates a special level of greatness in us, because we've been robbed throughout history of who we are. When you look at Asian people, they have their culture. They know about their culture. They can go back hundreds and thousands of years to whatever dynasty, right? Same thing with white people. Same thing with people from everywhere except for African Americans. Even people in Africa still have that heritage, because they weren't, for the most part, for those that weren't broken down through the apartheid, right? But there's a lot of things that were lost on us here in America, because it was a part of that enslavement process, not allowing us to know how to read, not allowing us to learn how to write, because that grows the mind, right? You want to keep somebody stagnated, you teach them, you keep them illiterate, right? On top of that, you take their religion from them, you take their language from them, and you pretty much teach it generationally so that they don't ever know that it existed.
Which makes us a special people, Sam.
Right.
Native, Blacks, descendants of American slaves here in the United States, right? That makes us special, because no other group had to deal with this, right? This is special circumstances,
right?
with contemporary peoples all over the world. Of course, other groups were impacted by colonization
and
slavery,
enslavement. There were definitely other
enslavement,
nationalities that were enslaved, but not like how
and
we
other
were.
stuff like this. But here in the Americas, on this side of the world, not just the United States, but the Caribbean islands, Brazil, South America, those areas,
Great Britain.
it's special
France.
people because we were able to progress and evolve out of that, especially here in the United States, where, Black culture here leads the way. And a lot of things that Black Americans do here is looked at across the world with a careful eye and an eye of admiration. And, some people can respect us to a certain extent because, we're at the stronghold of this stuff, of one of the most powerful countries in the world, and we're still, we still try to make our fights where we can. So, I think a lot of people can respect that in a certain aspect. That's all I wanted to say. That was my point.
Were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was definitely gonna say, I definitely think that that's one of the things that we have to look at too, as in regards to the different relations, because like you said, Haiti was one of the first ones to get, be a Black nation to get their freedom, and we talked about that as well. But you know what I'm saying. But again, how does it seem like a lot of culture gets pushed through what you know what I'm saying? It looks like American culture a lot of times, throughout the nation, and I think that has to stand for something. But I definitely wanted to just say that and wrap it up. Sam, you have some other stuff that you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and get into our motivational minute. I did find a quote. It's about family. And it says, I can't really read who wrote it, but it does say that a person's own family is, without doubt, the greatest wealth that we will ever possess. Treasure every moment and take the time to ensure that the story you create is the one that you will be proud of and look back on with a huge smile. And the reason why I chose that one for this week is because, when you talk about the Willie Lynch papers and you talk about the way that the enslaved were treated as if they were animals, they were robbed of the ability to have a family, even though they did it anyway, if that makes any sense. They did it despite the fact that they weren't allowed to. And that not only just shows the resilience and the strength of a people, but it also touches on the purpose of family. One thing we never talked about here is how families were separated and all that, but a lot of people know that already. They know children were separated from their mothers, some of them at birth, some of them they got to have a whole relationship with them, and they separated husbands from wives, mothers from children, fathers from children, the whole bit. And whether it be because it was sold off to different plantations or killed, or even because they ran away, the foundation was tainted when Willie Lynch decided to come out.
Right. It was not just the separation, Sam, but the long-term profit planning. He was saying hundreds of years, your family, legacy, stuff that people die for.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons why this stuff continued. I just wanted to point that out.
Right. And that's the reason why I say it was tainted, right? Because the enslaved in that time did the best that they could with the resources that they had and with the knowledge that they had. Because remember, they were illiterate, they didn't know, and they just did the best that they could.
And I think that kind of goes on to today as well.
It absolutely
we're fortunate enough to have we're fortunate enough to have the internet. We're fortunate enough to have resources that allow us to be able to look up things and get access. But prior to our generation, you had to get to journals. There are certain books that people could read, but again, it wasn't like Amazon or this, that, and the third, where, you might have to go look online or a magazine, or a bookstore.
You definitely had to work harder to get the information. We do have
It was information available. I'm not going to sit there and say that the information was available, but it might not be readily available to individuals, whether it was at a local museum. So, again, it wasn't. But I think, again, depending on the type of parenting you had, I remember one of my favorite books growing up was Why Do the People Fly? And we read that. So there's ways that you could kind of teach your children history and things of that nature so that they can kind of know themselves and know their history and be proud of who they are. I know I was fortunate enough to grow up in a Black city in an area as well, coming up and having family around and stuff like that. So you're able to find, love for culture a lot of times throughout your life. So I just wanted to say that real quick. I know Sam's about to get ready to come in and bring in, her Black business and things.
Yeah, I was gonna go ahead and highlight the Black business again. One of the things I didn't mention about this Black business, aside from the fact that, she calls herself the Hood Alchemist. That's the name of the company. Her name is Danielle Carroll. She's my cousin. It's one of the reasons why I use her products, because I trust her. But one of the reasons why she does these products is because she's getting back to her ancestry, right? And it's ways that we can go ahead and continue to, take good care of our skin and our hair, and also our spirit, right? Whether it be because you're burning some sage, or you need to take a long, relaxing bath because you had a long, frustrating day. Whatever it is, if you need to just, exfoliate your skin or whatever it is, it's to help find ways to heal yourself, and to grow yourself. So make sure you go check her out. She's got a lot of different products. Again, I'm going to click on this really quickly so that you can see that's her logo, the Hood Alchemist. She's got a lot of I don't know why my thing keeps doing the stupid pop-up thing. Oh, it's gone. There it is. She's got a lot of good, reasonably priced products, whether it be for your lips, whether it be incense, sage, body scrubs, bath teas, and things for your hair, things like that. So you guys, please make sure you go check her out. Her website, again, is up here. It's hoodalchemistco.com. It's HOODALCHE, M as in Michael, IST as in Tom, CO.com. So you guys, please make sure you check her out. The products are great. So with that being said, you guys, we really appreciate you tuning in. We hope that you tune in with us next week for another portion of this segment as it relates to family ties and what goes on with Black families. I want to also invite you guys to make sure you check us out every Wednesday on What's Up Wednesday at 8:30-ish p.m. on Instagram on our Counterpoise podcast. You can also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Counterpoise Podcast. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. We love y'all. I'm one of your co-hosts, Samantha Adams. You can find me on Instagram at Samantha Renee 77_ESQ, and on Facebook at Samantha Adams -ESQ. Guys, want to go ahead and drop your socials?
Yeah, you can catch me at that guy 2104 on Instagram. I look forward to catching y'all on Wednesdays, and we right back next week.
You can find me at Malik M. Foster on all social media handles. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Like, share, comment, tell a friend. And if you guys want us to talk about some different topics in the future, send us a message. You can comment, send us a direct message, whatever you need to do, and we'll get back to you. Anybody have anything else to say? Sam?
Hey, peace.
All right, let's get out of here, guys.
We'll see y'all Wednesday.
Yeah, 8:30-ish.